a Native American woman now decided to come out to talk about how Black Americans are settlers. Like, people were like, what is she talking about? And you guess what? I'm just going to roll the clip because there's no point really talking too much until when I get to my own last part where I have to put out my own scent. This woman decided to come out to talk about how, Black Americans are unappreciative, like colonization actually put up their life in a better position compared to how they could have been if there was no colonization. Lovelies, I'm just going to roll the clip as well as some of other stitches I was able to put together. Please leave me your own thought in the comment section and let's dive into it.
Black Americans' claim of being the original indigenous people of this land was actually somewhat predicted in this article I read a while back. One part of the article claims that there are differences between being oppressed and being a settler. If people are unable to distinguish between the two, then they risk perpetuating the very colonial dynamics they claim to resist. Overall, I guess that this video won't just be encompassing Black Americans, but also other settler immigrants, in hopes that they can, in more detail, understand these dynamics and be able to not repeat these cycles of oppression and control. Black Americans are just the most prominent example I see happening currently. So this article describes a settler move to innocence called colonial equivocation. To elaborate on this, I quickly want to read you guys this quote. Describing all struggles against imperialism as decolonizing creates a convenient ambiguity between decolonization and social justice work, especially among people of color, queer people, and other groups minoritized by the settler nation state. We are all colonized may be a true statement, but is deceptively abrasive and vague. Its inference is that none of us are settlers. End quote. This derives from the article Decolonization is Not a Metaphor, written by Eva Tuck and K. Wayne Yang, and that quote can be found on page 17. It is a fact that we are all affected by colonization, but by saying that we are all colonized, the implication is that no one is a settler, which can ignore the fact that some people of color can still be settlers on indigenous land that was taken from us. In movements where people of marginalized groups can come together to fight shared forms of oppression, there is a real temptation to emphasize unity over difference. Now, when addressing these issues, these individuals need to move with caution, because if coalition spaces don't make space for indigenous sovereignty and don't recognize the difference between being oppressed and being a settler, then they risk reproducing the same colonial dynamics they claim to oppose. Now, this is where I see the issue around Black Americans identifying as Native American begin to arise. Look, I'm not trying to divide or cancel each other. I'm simply trying to highlight the importance of being more precise, accountable, and just in how we understand and resist systems of power. Now, first, we need to look at why people claim indigenous identity to begin with. There are numerous reasons as to why people pretend or want to identify as indigenous. False claims of indigeneity can be used to gain access to career and academic funds, or to access the minimal financial gains indigenous communities are compensated for decades of resource extraction of our territories. Some individuals may want the social clout of being indigenous. Another reason for identifying as indigenous is incorrect family lore. This could be in the form of stories passed down from a grandparent telling tales of a distant indigenous ancestor. You know, the old claim of my great-great-grandmother was a Cherokee princess kind of thing. But I think the most prevalent reason for wanting to identify as indigenous comes from the writings of Philip J. Delorias in their 1998's Playing Indian. Now, to quote, Americans wanted to feel a natural affinity with the continent, end quote. In other words, there is a settler anxiety of not belonging. So in essence, they want to feel a part of something, whether a family or a culture that is directly connected to this land. Now, on a side note, we could say with this logic, people who are against immigration don't have any real stance, as many people's ancestors came here illegally at some point and don't belong here. And it's interesting how they're scared the way that immigrants will treat them is the exact way that colonial settlers treated indigenous peoples when they came here. They raped and assaulted and genocided our people, and now they're scared that immigrants are just criminals and blah, blah, blah. But I can make a whole video around that another time. Anyways, settlers are not just Caucasian Americans. With this understanding, there are a few complexities to address. The United States is a settler colonial nation state that also operates as an empire by utilizing external and internal forms of colonization simultaneous to the settler colonial project. This means that dispossessed people are brought onto seized indigenous land through other colonial projects, such as military recruitment, often from poor or racialized communities such as Puerto Rico and the Philippines, labor migration, such as bringing bringing in low-wage farm workers, or high-skilled workers such as bringing in engineers from India or the Philippines. There is displacement due to war or economic policies. For instance, the millions of refugees from countries impacted by US wars or neoliberal trade deals. And there's the most notable one we're kind of highlighting in this video, which is enslavement, as in the forced migration and labor of African people. Now, to quote, "In this sense, settlers are diverse, not just of white European descent, but include people of color, even from other colonial contexts." End quote. Page 7 can be found in that article. So, while these individuals didn't directly take the land, they still benefit from and participate in the settler colonial structure, just differently than white tea settlers. To kind of give an example, let's say an immigrant from a formerly colonized country settles in Canada. They may face racism and discrimination, but they also live on Indigenous land and benefit from the infrastructure and systems that were built through colonization. If they participate in land ownership, state governance, or simply benefit from services like healthcare and education without recognizing Indigenous sovereignty, they are participating in and benefiting from settler colonialism. This doesn't mean that they are bad people, but it does mean that they are not outside of or innocent in these systems. Settler colonialism in the US doesn't only involve white tea Europeans. It includes many racial and ethnic groups because the structure itself is about occupation and control of Indigenous land, not just race. People of color can be both oppressed and settlers at the same time, depending on the context. With all of this, solidarity becomes complex. I mean, this challenges us to rethink what true decolonization and solidarity looks like. It's not just about racial justice or economic justice, but land justice and Indigenous sovereignty. I mean, how do people who are themselves displaced or oppressed stand in solidarity with Indigenous peoples whose land they now occupy? If we don't address these complexities honestly, or if we fail in confronting what responsibility comes with those who now settle to the Americas specifically, then those very people who are affected by colonialism also risk perpetuating the same harmful systems they claim to oppose. In this, we need to recognize three things to make sure that we don't repeat these cycles. First, the complexity of power and position, including how one can be both oppressed and complicit. Recognize that not all forms of colonialism are the same and that settler colonialism is still ongoing, and be able to center Indigenous struggles and sovereignty, not sidelight them with vague universal language like we're all colonized. When people of color immigrate into the US or Canada, they aren't just newcomers who are entering a country, but more specifically, they're entering a settler colonial system where they are placed into pre-existing structures of power based on race, land, and labor. For instance, when you are entering these countries, you're either encouraged to assimilate and become a settler by buying land, investing in whiteness, adopting settler norms, or you are marked as a criminal, disposable, or unassimilable. For example, if you don't assimilate into these white norms, into whiteness, you are now seen as illegal, as threats, or as permanent outsiders, kind of thing. These pre-existing structures can be known as the settler, native, and slave, and immigrants or newcomers are slotted into them in complicated and contradictory ways. Look, colonialism is no longer distinct, but is now blending into new and complex forms. In this, we can explore a term also coined in the article called shuffling between categories, which means settler colonialism doesn't treat these categories as fixed. It moves people around in ways that serve its power. To kind of explain in more detail, this article gives an example on page 18, the Aleut people. And I am so sorry if I am pronouncing that wrong. They are a native group who were originally seen as indigenous to the Aleutian Islands, but during World War II, they were suddenly treated more like the Orientalized others, suspected of being loyal to Japan, racialized as potentially dangerous or indistinguishable from the enemy. At the same time, their forced relocation and the horrific camp conditions caused death and illness, resembling the treatment of the enslavable other, being treated as bodies to be moved, controlled, and neglected without consequence. Now, why does this matter? Because it shows that settler colonialism isn't rigid, it's strategically flexible. It reassigns racial meanings and political status to different groups depending on what protects or extends settler power. The Aleut indigenous people can be temporarily racialized as foreign enemies or labor bodies to justify removal or neglect, even while they remain indigenous. The triad, settler, native, slave, isn't just a descriptive model. It's an active mechanism of control, adaptable to new situations like war, migration, or economic shifts. The shuffling isn't about how the state reclassifies people for convenience and control.
Hello there. Guess what you can't claim? to be the original inhabitant of the world. How about that? We don't have to claim a land mass. We were here first. How about that? Be encouraged, my brothers and sisters. You don't have to claim individual land masses. You can claim the entire earth. We are indigenous to the earth. How about that? You like that? And unlike you, we don't share common ancestors with the rest of the world. And by ancestors, I mean Neanderthals and Denisovans. We're 100% Homo sapien, homegrown. So have fun with the landmass of America. I could care the fuck less. 10 out of fucking 10.
Wait a minute, what? So basically you're coming for African Americans because you all were promised equal power in your treaty that has not been acknowledged and has not been honored. And that's somehow our fault? This content creator made a video essentially saying that black people benefit from colonialism. Ain't that some bullshit? Why the fuck people just don't leave us alone? How the fuck we benefit from something where we were brought here against our will? Not only that, we were murdered, we were raped, we were eaten, we were beaten, we were slaughtered, we were fed to alligators. And you're saying that we benefited from colonialism, and we still do, because we have jobs and have homes and have land and we work and we get benefits from the government and pay taxes. So we're the enemy now? It seems like your problem is with the wrong persons. It seems like you don't want to offend your oppressor because somehow, some way, you really still feel like there's an opportunity in y'all having equal rights and equal power over the United States. And I'm here to tell you, boo-boo, that's not going to happen. I promise you that. It seems like y'all, in the time, your ancestors should have fought a little bit harder. Should have fought a little bit harder to keep what was rightfully yours. You want them to restore sovereignty. That doesn't have to be restored if y'all just fought a little harder. Don't you think so? Now you see how crazy that sounds when your ancestors were beaten, raped, murdered, and things were stolen from them? Kind of sounds familiar, doesn't it? We were taken from West Africa and our land was taken over. And have you ever heard of Mansa Musa? He was the richest, wealthiest person in the world that ever existed. Our ancestors were stripped of their wealth. They were stripped of their resources, and we were bought here through our ancestors. And then you go on to say in your video, well, I don't feel like y'all should have to leave the United States. I don't feel like you should have to leave the land. Bitch, we're not. We built this shit. For you to sit up here and say, well, you know, I just had trouble trying to phrase it the right way. Maybe you should redo some research. Maybe you should keep your mouth shut before you get on this platform and say the most ignorant shit that you could ever think of. It is not our fault that y'all were not given equal power as stated in your treaty and you want your sovereignty to be restored. Mind you, you all got reparations. You all get Native American TANF and Native American stamps, and you have had decades upon decades of settlements, decades upon decades of reparations. Your family is set for life. Your kids are set for life. We weren't given anything. And whenever we say anything about it, it's, oh, you're throwing the black card, you're throwing the race card. And for you to say the oppressed are settlers, girl, get the fuck out my face. Respectfully, please.
Black people truly have no allies, and solidarity is really out the window in my mind for everyone under the POC umbrella. But especially when it comes to black people, it appears that we are just the can everybody wants to kick around. A Native woman came online and said that black people are settlers. We are the settlers under the settler colonialism.
Black Americans' claim of being the original indigenous people of this land was actually somewhat predicted in this article. There are differences between being oppressed and being a settler. If people are unable to distinguish between the two, then they think Black Americans, but also other settler immigrants. It is a fact that we are all affected by colonization, but by saying that we are all colonized, the implication is that no one is a settler, which can ignore the fact that some people of color can still be settlers on indigenous land.
you may be thinking to yourself, how does that make any sense? Because a native definitely knows that African Americans are a product of enslaved people. But she's tying it to all those pretendians who saying that they're the original inhabitants of this land. They're the original Indians. They're the natives of this land, even though that's not all of us. So to take a claim that's made by a small percentage of black people in this country and then say that all black people are settlers is really crazy. Settler colonialism is a logic and structure using colonial rule to overtake an environment and replace it with your own people and replace the indigenous people, which has happened here. Black people did not settle in America by choice. Anybody that has settled around the world under the imperialistic guise that happened during the Great Scramble for Africa, for China, India, Australia, and Americas, that was Europeans. We did not settle here. We were forced here by slavery, a system of slavery, one of the biggest migration of human bodies in human history. And we then spent hundreds of years here under forced labor. While at the same time, I can hold two truths. At the same time, your ancestors were killed, were taken out by biological warfare. Your land was stolen. There were land grabs. You were forced into settlements. You were forced into containment areas. That is true. But we didn't do that. We didn't take your land over. If anything, the Malian kingdom definitely visited America hundreds of years before Europe. Scandinavians visited the America hundreds of years before Columbus. But the French, the Dutch, the English, they stayed. The Spanish, they stayed. This conversation is crazy. I feel like every day there's always something new that's coming up about Black Americans that people feel the need to use us to drive their point home. Two things can be true. This can be your land, you can be colonized, you can be displaced, and settlers took your land. I can be the product of colonialism by forced migration and slavery. Wow. Because the pretendians are coming online saying that they're the natives, you're saying that we all are settlers. I've heard it all. I've heard it all.
Here's something they would never tell you in school. Black Americans are not immigrants. We're not minorities. We're not former slaves in the way they framed it. We are prisoners of war. Think about it. War was declared on our people the moment Europeans landed on these shores. Not just in Africa, right here on this land, Turtle Island, the Americas. We were already here, from the Carolinas to California. We were the copper-skinned tribes they couldn't control, so they reclassified us, called us colored, Negro, and African American to sever the roots. But this was war. Mass incarceration, that's a POW camp. The ghetto, that's a containment zone. Public school curriculum, man, that's psychological warfare. And the 13th Amendment, a legal trap to turn freemen back into slaves. Don't believe me? Look at the language. Negro became a status, not a nationality. And once you strip a people of nationhood, you can do anything to them. Take their land, take their names, make them believe their home is elsewhere. But here's the truth they buried. Many of us descendants of the original Americans, the Yamasee, the Washita, Choctaw, and the Blackfoot, we weren't born here. We were already here. The war wasn't overseas. It was domestic, and it never ended. This isn't about victimhood. It's about status. It's about reclaiming identity, because until we know who we are, we're still prisoners in their system. And the moment we remember, the war ends. Ashe, peace to the gods and goddesses.
Everybody will just come up and talk about Black American this, Black people that this, Black. So this, I think she's a Native American woman. She goes as far as to read so many theories about, in conclusion, she believes that, colonization actually gave Black Americans opportunities, to better their life. They have opportunity to get some free things and all of that, all of the things that she have to say. And this same statement remind me of a particular stage that I put up here, where I think she's actually a British woman, still saying the same thing. She was like, colonization actually brought about civilization, especially in Africa. Like, if not because of colonization, no one would know nothing about people wouldn't get educated, especially people that looks like me. Like they won't get educated, they will not be clean. Like she even goes as far as to talk about how colonization brought about cleanliness, and that was where I hold on to. I was like, I have been stitching so many videos here where so many pine colored women are thanking and blessing black women, teaching them how to properly exfoliate and bath themselves. And this woman, on the other hand, she goes as far as to talk about how, oh my God, colonization brought about um cleanliness, education, as if Africans never had their own form of education. You bringing your Western education does not really mean that African does not have their own type of education. And now back to this lady. This lady, is calling some Black Americans like settlers. Like, how can you say that colonization and all of that, benefited Black Americans or Black people when they're about? Or how can you compare people whom were taken from their comfort zone, like they were forcefully taken from their comfort zone. They were sold into slavery. They helped build a country. They never even benefited. Like they went through all sort of atrocities. Some of them goes as far as going into chattel slavery, and all of a sudden you think that they are all settlers. Like I don't even understand where this lady is coming from. But the thing is that sometimes, even if you want to put up something, you have to really think it through. You have to think it through and through and through and through again before coming out to talk about how Black American this, Black people that, and all of that. Like seriously, this is the reason why people that looks like me find it very very difficult to have eyelash with every other marginalized group or every other POC group, because the people you actually thought that you guys are in the same boat together, you guys are fighting for a common goal, all of a sudden will just disappoint you. That's why even till date, when Black people were like, okay, we are minding our business, we are staying put, we do not want to get ourselves involved with most of these POCs coming of faking solidarity, and at the end of the day, they just want to use you as much as they can, and after which they already know whom they want to stand in solidarity with. The same thing is happening with every other POC. Everybody is just claiming that, okay, you are unappreciative, the other one is appreciative. Like it's just getting so messy this time around that people really need to focus more on their own community and try to build it. Black people, in the other hand, is already doing the same thing. They don't want to get themselves involved with, they just want to build their own community. But the thing is that so many other POC are constantly on the neck of these people. If it's not Black fatigue, they will call ghetto. If it's not ghetto, you are undeserving. Like at this point, it's actually getting so tiring. Like, why not maybe focus on knowing your own history, trying to know about your own settlers, or try to know about how you came to be, rather than looking for people that looks like me who were settlers or were enslaved and all of that. Like this whole thing with colonization, we have been having like colonization being is a form of an opportunity for Black people. Like I didn't see it that way. Till date, these people are still being discriminated. Till date, these people are still for opportunity for Black people. Like I didn't see it that way. Till date, these people are still being discriminated. Till date, these people are still fighting for reparations. Till date, these people are on the verge of segregation. So what are you talking about? Like seriously, I do not blame Ibrahim Traore for even coming out to talk about how, okay, I think there is a need for us to have black it was like African United States of Africa, which I still agree with him, because this whole thing is just like at the end of the day, everybody think that, oh, Black people, oh, you guys complain a lot, we are your savior, without us, like without even realizing that these people, a lot of people are like calling and would are even the first people who ever resisted in the planet Earth. you know they were all um, victims of colonization, slavery, and all of that because of the kind of heart they have. Like I used to tell my friend that, do you know why it's as if black people are always the ones at the receiving end, always the ones to suffer, always the ones to be enslaved, always the ones to. It is because of our heart. Our heart is so pure. We are like everyone just wants to get a piece of that, and when they have it, they discard us. That's why, because of this, or because of the ongoing black people standing up business, is making or is getting a lot of people to awaken their variances or their anti-blackness. And I think it's a good thing. It's rather, or it's better you know who your enemy is in order to avoid them, than to actually think that you're all smiley with these people, and at the end of the day they are just gonna tell you to. Anyway, lovelies, wanna just leave me your own thought in the comment section of what you think of this video. Please, lovelies, if you've not subscribed to this channel, do your girl a huge vote to click on the subscription button, like, and I will see you, lovelies, when I upload the next one.